I will turn into English for our next speaker. Is Kyle Gustafson. Is the science official from the Office of Naval Research Global. The office is located in Brazil. And I really appreciate and thank you for coming. So we have in our in la Facultad de Ciencias Químicas, we have 2 grants with them. One is from Alejandro and the other one from Manuela. And I think for the topics and disciplines that they found, it's a very interesting opportunity for our university and facultad and schools. So thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for the invitation. Thanks for the invitation, Eva. This is really a fantastic event, right? To have, and I'm sorry I don't speak Spanish very well. I could sort of fake it, but it would be difficult. So I guess Manuela and Alejandro can answer any questions that aren't clear after I speak. And if we need some translation questions, Eva can help as well. But yeah, it kind of looks like something completely different because it's DoD versus NIH, very different agencies, I suppose. But I think you'll see there's lots of similarities between what Eva described, how to go for NIH funding, but there's also some important differences. One big difference is that NIH doesn't have someone like me living in South America who can hop over and talk to you directly about and answer questions about how the funding works. So there's lots of things I don't know about NIH funding. So you're lucky you have Eva here to talk about NIH. But yeah, so the DoD sort of has more leeway and freedom to spend money around the world, and maybe the NIH has to have these special foreign justification sheets, and most U.S. agencies can't send dollars directly into pesos or into soles or into the rest of the world. So the DoD sort of has that ability, and I think once you talk to Alejandro and Manuela and understand that we fund basic research, you'll understand that it makes sense for a lot of science groups here. So that's my name, Kyle. And just to tell you, since I'm the outsider kind of coming in, although I know a few of you, I have a PhD in physics from the US. I did my postdoc like Eva in Switzerland, maybe at around the same time. And then I went to work for the Gates Foundation on disease modeling like Ebola and malaria. So I have a bit of that infectious disease background as well. But then I started working for the Navy, doing bioacoustics and machine learning for time series, things you hear under the sea, for example. But then I came to work for this really interesting organization called ONR Global, which is the Office of Naval Research Global. And I put the history lesson here just to give you an idea of why do they send us all around the world to look for science. It started just after World War II when the Navy scientists had gone to England to figure out how to use radar during the war and to break the codes that needed to be broken. But then some of the Navy scientists just liked living in London, so they stayed there, for many years. And then they decided to open an office in Tokyo as well, to make contact with all the fantastic Japanese scientists, the Korean scientists, as those countries were growing their science competencies. And then at some point, those 2 offices, Tokyo and London, merged into one and then started expanding. And 22 years ago, they opened the office in Santiago de Chile. So it's been a long time that we've had an eye on our neighbors in Latin America. And I think it's a unique sort of perspective. The other agencies don't really send people down here. It seems like NIH has specific programs that send a lot of R1 money here to Argentina and
to the low and middle income countries working on infectious diseases. Right.
Okay. So Argentina is probably upper middle, right? Upper middle income.
Yeah, and it depends on the year. So it happens once that I go submitting my thing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But now we are.
But for example, USAID does a lot of funding in Peru, Bolivia, which were probably more lower middle income. But I think Argentina and Brazil especially Chile, are too wealthy to have USAID funding.
Right.
Yeah. And so NIH is one that does direct research funding, which is great. And so the Sao Paulo office where I am opened in the button here there's a button. Almost 10 years ago in Sao Paulo, and I've been there for 3 years. So I have a bit of experience and can answer some of those questions that would have been confusing for me 3 years ago. So I hope when my successor comes, so I probably have 2 more years in Sao Paulo to help with grants. And I'd like to get some more grants into Cordoba. I've been here 3 times now. And obviously, Química Cordoba is a great institute. So, but Eva, are you acting as like you're just doing this as a volunteer, right? Sort of helping. There's no research office in Química. It seems like Alejandro and Manuela have done the work also.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I am, at this moment, I am like the officer or secretary of science and technology, so I am
Okay.
trying to organize.
Official,
this, yes,
yeah,
official,
okay, good. But still academic volunteer,
Yeah.
sort of additional duties.
Service, yeah.
Exactly. But does Cordoba, does UNC have a research office like at the university level where they help organize grant applications?
They do.
Okay, good. So the SAM registration, is there one just for Químicas? There's a SAM for Química or no?
In our case, we register the institute, which is easier to work with because the UNC is too
Right.
big.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we have double.
Yeah, UNC
double
is too big,
affiliation.
yeah.
We have double affiliation because we belong
But the
to
CONICET
the
Institute,
Right.
yeah, right, okay. And they let you receive the funds in a separate
Yes.
account, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I've had struggles, of course, with CONICET, trying to convince them to send money to like bank accounts. In fact, there was a grant in Corrientes that which was really lost because CONICET made it very difficult. So
The administrative office in Concept is in Buenos Aires.
Exactly.
So for us, it's more difficult.
Exactly.
Here, the university is located sited here.
exactly, and Cordoba is a big enough university that they figure it out, and you guys are good, so you know how to get it done. Yeah, we lost one in Corrientes, and there's a workshop we went to fund in Ushuaia, off topic, at Cadiz. And they, CONICET said, okay, send the money to us and we'll send it to Cadiz. And I said, no. Last time that happened, you couldn't figure it out. So they said, okay, fine, Cadiz can receive the money. So it's just interesting from your perspective. There's some institutes that push back and say, we need this to come straight to us.
Yes.
But CONICET wants to keep everything.
Now we have, since I don't know, around 10 years, CONICET organized offices in different
right,
provinces.
Alejandro.
That is CCT Cordoba.
Yeah, CCT, that's a special thing.
And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
easier because they are there.
You're right.
Just crossing the street.
Of course.
We can go there and.
That's right. CCT is a special thing.
Yeah.
That's right. Like Ushuaia,
Yeah,
Tierra del
right.
Fuego doesn't have
Yeah.
their own CCT.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this event is really great. Thanks for having me for this event. And again, this is where we are around the world, Santiago, Sao Paulo, London and Tokyo and Singapore and Australia and Prague. And we're trying to put more people into India, but this is the ONR global world. But I also put the DoD international offices, and you see there's a Trivial Pursuit tie here with yellow, red, and green. And the reason is because there's also an Air Force Office of Scientific Research person in Sao Paulo, and also an Army research lab person, and they can all give grants as well. So there's lots of attention, and we live in Sao Paulo, but there's lots of attention on the Southern Cone, South America, the Americas overall. In any case, what we're trying to do is fund people who are going to get Nobel Prizes. That's what we're trying to do. So some of you are on the way there. Most of us will never make it. This is really this is our claim to fame, that we've funded research for the last 100 years that leads to Nobel Prizes. It's really for us, for my office, we like to trace what we're doing into something that's useful for DoD. But all of us are scientists, so we're funding science for the sake of science, and that leads to good things for the Navy and the Air Force down the line. But getting a Nobel Prize for a project, someone who worked on a project that I funded, I won't know because I'll probably be gone. But Nobel Prizes are the big goal here. Another point I'd like to make is the Climate Action 2030 initiative, and I hope this continues past the election next month. But it's reality and not reality. But so climate change, it was a priority for the Navy. The Navy has all of its ships and its bases up against the water, so it's especially important for the Navy. So anytime we can do like a climate angle on a research proposal, we have like a separate piece of funding, and I put a climate tag on it, and it usually moves pretty quickly. So that's just a little tip. But I think, I think Ava's presentation was so great. I took some notes to like compare and contrast, what ONR Global does, kind of in the language maybe of NIH so I'd like to say, the R21s, that's what we're doing, these exploratory, small 3-year grants. We're not trying to do R1s for 10 years. We're trying to say, let's do something new, something a little bit crazy. And we're trying to stay, not trying, but by law, we have to stay here in the very low TRL space. We're not funding anything that's related to the actual ships or the airplanes. We're just funding basic science. And so it's like an R21 is the comparison to NIH. But I guess we tend to be both more targeted, like we talk to individual people and look for like specific things, but we also have like a really wide aperture. So there's lots of different things we're interested in. And maybe that's where I should go to the website. That's important, but we'll do that in a minute. So ONR Technology and Research, you can go like scroll down here, and there's, some things that are obviously a little too applied. Like you aren't going to do anti-submarine warfare, but you might be doing applied and computational analysis. So the website, it's a little distracting, but if you can focus in on these areas where, we're looking at the mathematics of complex phenomena. I'm not sure multi-phase, multi-material problems could be in there. Fluid transport and mixing, I know that could come into chemistry. This may not be the best one for chemistry, but my point is, go on the website, read what we're interested in scientifically, and then there's actually someone's name down here. This is the program officer, just like Ava was talking about. You have your program officer you talk to. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem with doing a matchmaker with the program officers is that, while I get like this much email from people who are sending me white papers, this guy gets like this much email, and he probably has never been to Argentina. He doesn't understand your capabilities here, and he probably won't hear back from Dr. Reza, who's a great guy, but you might not hear back. So that's really why I'm here, is to meet you in person, and so you can just email me directly. And while I'm not a chemist or an expert in this particular area, I can get their attention and be kind of the pipe between these guys. But I guess my point is, the program officers here, they have a much larger budget. They might have $40 million of research every year. And I'm only doing about $1 million of research a year. So I don't have to ask them for money, but if you can do a project for us that's very successful after 3 years, then that really can get their attention. And what we should always do when you do a project with us is get you back to the US for a program review, which I don't think we've really done for you guys yet, but at your stage, we need to figure that out, actually. So I guess slide presentations are fun. And I should continue with that. So yeah, just again, to just really probably overemphasize this is that, what we're looking for in our international science program of basic research is stuff that's here, so that it's use inspired. It doesn't have to be doing the applied work, but it's nice to know what's inspired you. And so they call this the Pasteur quadrant, because Louis Pasteur wasn't looking for what he found, but he was thinking about what he wanted to find. And so that, there's a nice interplay between curiosity, and trying to understand something, and then knowing where you want to go. And so the combination of those is interesting. And so, like Edison, I suppose he built a team to test light bulbs, and they tested 1,000 different kind of light bulb filaments, and they found one. That's really not what I would fund in my basic research program. I would fund something where you're discovering something new, but that there's an interesting application out there to help justify the funding, actually. And those interesting applications are on that website I just showed you, all those technology areas. And maybe I'll just give you the scope of of how many areas there are. You can go look yourself, of course, but there's a lot of different areas. And if you poke around, so like polymer matrix composites, that might be a chemistry topic. But if you poke around on this website in a different way, if you go to organization and these departments, there's probably a little bit of chemistry in most of these departments. And they all sound a little scary, like weapons and things, but you know, Congress is always reading our websites and making sure we're spending the money properly. So you go to this might not make sense at first, but you go to sea warfare and weapons, and then you go down and you find like materials. Oh, so like here it's maybe organized a bit better. And Dr. McKinnon is into all these different areas and sort of organizes. So if you don't want to scroll through the big list, you can try and focus down on these smaller lists. And, you know. Oh, and that reminds me of something else that Ava said, unsolicited versus NIH requested. So that maybe that's where I'll take you to the call for funding and then explain what's going on with me being here and soliciting proposals. So this is another website. This is the grants.gov number that you have to type in to find it on grants.gov, but this is the proposal here. This is the call for proposals. So just like NIH has, there's a big, very long description of exactly what we're doing, codes and things. But one thing about this document is there are actually no science topics listed in here. There's no specific request or solicitation for specific things. This is just saying we're open for submissions, and then it's really up to, I guess, us to talk about what makes sense. And so I would say I'm not coming here to solicit a specific topic of research, but I'm just saying I'd like to solicit some white papers that are doing new things, exciting things, maybe high risk things. And so that's the theme of what we fund in the international science program. I think I've said a lot in a foreign language. So are there any questions or anything to clarify at this point? Okay. So we have the big document here. I am always pointing people to Appendix 1, requirements applicable to grants. Because down here, it actually goes through exactly how to make a proposal. And so it's the same form for the NIH, the SF424 that Ava mentioned, but I think it's really important to note of extreme importance that when you go to grants.gov, do not download the 424 and start filling it out. You need to get on grants.gov and open a workspace, because the workspace will take you through exactly what we require. The 424 probably has 100 pages, but we only need like 2 or 3 pages worth. So that's extremely important. But Alejandro and Manuela will make sure you don't make that mistake, I'm sure. Maybe back to the slides to give us some structure here. So we don't require a special justification to make a foreign award, right? So I will take a white paper and say it looks good, and then I'll recommend it for funding. But I don't have to recommend it and say, we have to do this in Argentina because of such and such. The fact that I'm here and the fact that I have my specific funding for research in South America means that I don't have to do a special foreign justification. A little bit different than NIH, which is probably good to remember. Yeah. I don't know, let's see, funding statistics, those are interesting. I guess we can go through these real quick. So this is all the agencies. So back to comparing with NIH, and NIH is Health and Human Services. Mm-hmm. So more than half of the $50 billion that the US government puts towards academic university research, more than half is NIH, because it's the institutes. It's a huge zoo of institutes, right? But the next biggest slice at 15% is DoD. And so that's academic research, most of it at US universities, but it's still $7.3 billion. And that's Navy, Air Force, and Army, and even DoD's head office, like DARPA. DARPA does research, and DARPA does international research as well. So all these offices do international. And then so of the DoD funding, a lot of it goes towards computer science, engineering, math, physics, even social science, and then life science is way down here. And I think that's important to note, is that if you're doing something that NIH would be interested in, we probably would not be interested in it. So anything that's medical or clinical, it all has to go NIH. We do some life sciences like synthetic biology or like basic research in biotech. So biochemistry projects could definitely make sense. Like we're funding Manuela's project to find antibiotics. You know, everyone needs antibiotics, but certainly the sailors out on an island somewhere, they would like to have good antibiotics. And so we're motivated for that. But any clinical trials, anything that's very medical is going to be NIH. These are those agencies I was talking about. So the Navy, as I represent, but also my colleagues in the Air Force and the Army, and then DARPA. DARPA does have that big chunk by itself. But DOD, yeah, so DOD S&T, which goes from basic research to more applied research, is $20 billion. But I guess over 2/3 of that is the basic research that goes straight to academia. But like I guess I didn't say, you know, like our foreign friends outside the US are getting maybe like 2% of that. So most of it's staying in the US, but we're bringing some of it outside. Oh, and then this is that point. So the international R&D budget. So this is kind of the flip side, right? So NIH, only 28% of all international research, which is about $1 billion, that's funded by the US government and sent overseas. Chunk of it is NIH. More than half of it is DoD, because we have the freedom to send money overseas. And then there is the USAID bit, which I mentioned. There's also NASA. NASA can send some money directly overseas. NSF does do overseas funding, but there can't be an award directly to Cordoba. The award has to be to a US performer, and they would do a supplement to have a collaborator in Cordoba. And then I still don't think they could pay your postdocs, but they could buy things to do research here, to do things that they could justify. So NSF has to justify the work. But you can see the DoD does the majority. And then, so this is good representation, right? This is great. We got DoD, we have NIH, and that's over 75%. So this workshop today is like almost everything. So this is the website again. I just made this slide again to try and translate, you know, the DoD words like warfare and weapons into what's actually happening. It's just material science and additive manufacturing and power and energy, renewable energy. If there's basic research in like battery technology, that's really interesting. Everybody likes to have batteries these days. And I'm sure there is some here. Okay, this is good. This is good. So I just mentioned, you know, like an R21 grant at NIH. We have this is most of our funding goes towards these seedling research grants. That's what Manuela and Alejandra have, about $50,000 to $100,000 per year for 3 years. Most of that usually goes towards student scholarships, hiring postdocs. We can pay for small equipment. Anything up to 50K is probably not going to be controversial with my leadership. Anything bigger than that is going to be like, can we afford it as equipment? And then of course consumables, which is important for the chemists, you know, burning through chemicals all the time. And it's really important again that our research grants go towards traveling to conferences around the world to present your work. Coming back and talking to Navy scientists about your work, if that makes sense. You don't have to do that, but if it makes sense. And then like publishing in these expensive open access journals, that's included. So everything that you need in a research grant to do the work and publish it. And that's all we want to see. This is academic work published. The other thing that's interesting, that can be somewhat easier to get and maybe, you know, less of a commitment to hire people and such, is to fund workshops. These have to take place outside the US. They don't have to take place in Argentina. They could be a friend across the border, but they could be somewhere here in Argentina. And usually that covers renting the facility. Almost always people use this to pay for travel. It's and the travel is for people who aren't from the US, who aren't residing in the US. It's just travel within the area. You can bring people from Europe to speak at the conference. If they just can't come from the US. You can invite people from the US, but we just don't want to use our money to pay for them. They should find their own money to do that. And then the other thing, which is actually really interesting, is the visiting scientist program. I said here that it can be used to socialize new proposals with the scientists back at the Naval Research Laboratory, for example. But I'm even sending some of our current grantees back to the US to go to program review on VSP funds. And this one's really easy. You don't have to go to grants.gov for VSP. You just go to me and I give a thumbs up, and then there's one more approval. It can be done in a month if no one's on vacation. That's what happened. And then we do, I don't know if we're going to do these global X challenges again, but let's ignore that for now. But if they come up, you can find them on our website. I really liked, see, I have this little flow chart, which doesn't really make sense. This is why I liked the NIH one much better, which is in your presentation. So I think it's probably, well, I think it's reasonable to say 9 months to a year between now and when the money actually arrives at the CCT account to do the project, right? But some of these things are a little bit different. You do need to brainstorm and have an idea, and then you can send it to me, and then I'll call the O&R program staff and make sure they like it, and then I would recommend it for funding, right? You can cross this one out. We don't have review committees. It's just me recommending it for funding based on a Navy scientist who likes it. There's not a big review. And then you can spend as long as you need to writing it. And even in this stage, when you're writing your proposal, we can do feedback with either with me or with a Navy scientist. You don't have to go into the corner of the library and then come out with a magical proposal. It can be a conversation that continues. And that's the point where I like to say that even though my job title is science director, I'm not directing your science and the Navy scientists. So I'm not soliciting an exact thing that we want. The Navy scientists that I work with are not going to direct your science. I'm just directing funding to go towards what you want to do. Because we want new ideas to come into the literature from what you know. At the Naval Research Lab, sometimes they get into a circle, they just talk to each other and no new ideas come in. So this is one way we get new ideas into the system, is travel around the world, find them. But there was, oh yeah, this was the point where I wanted to go to, I'm probably going too long, but this is a nice, nice website. I can send this to you, or you can, I'll just leave it here and you can share it around. Someone just wrote this up 10 years ago, but it's still pretty accurate. Some things you don't really need to worry about, but the difference between a white paper and a proposal is important. So like the definition of a white paper, which is, what is the scientific part of the proposal? A proposal includes a budget and all kinds of complicated bureaucracy, but the white paper is the science without the bureaucracy. And then there's a format, and just like all these sections are good. So do it in the abstract. What's the problem? What's the background on the problem? It's probably the same thing that the NIH recommends. Yeah, that's probably all I have. Maybe there's a last slide on my. So this is what we were just talking about. Right, yeah, so we make the contact today. You can send a white paper, a draft of a white paper. We can go over it back and forth, and then I would solicit a full proposal after we agree it's a good white paper. And publishing. All we're doing is publishing. There's no strings attached. We're not buying prototypes. We're not buying intellectual property. We just want published work to get out there to improve scientific understanding. Oh, here's a list of many of our current and recent grants to show you. And many of these were made before I came. But, just to show you the huge range of things from Alejandro's project on metal organic frameworks, to Manuela's work on antimicrobial compounds, bone biofabrication with adipose stem cells. That's the closest thing to like an NIH project that I've seen funded. And when I've brought projects like that to our program these days, and they usually say, maybe not. But so like superconductivity, that could get into chemistry. This is a study of like the makeup of the microbiomes, in, which is really the bacteria that live in the algae on the coast, which is kind of interesting and probably has chemistry overlap. Anything with quantum is still hot. This is Anderson Gomez in Brazil. This could be a chemistry project. I think he's a physicist, but it could be physical chemistry if you think about it. Anyway, all the way up to using the Belgrano to, I guess there's soldiers, Argentine soldiers down in Antarctica who have no sunlight for 3 months a year, and then seeing what happens to their physiology. That's a cool project out of Católica in Buenos Aires. This is just the point I was making, that we're not buying your intellectual property. Publish your results, give us the annual report, I think, like you were saying. Oh, and then these are that was from a different audience. So those are no good. I guess here's my disclaimer. I guess I could leave it there, but okay. Any questions? Thanks for being here. This is really cool. It's really special that Eva has done this, to do this kind of workshop, right? So if there's any workshopping we can do later today and talk about details, we can do that while I'm here. But you're very lucky also to have 2 current grantees. I don't think we have any Air Force projects here yet, but I can push on Jim. Jim came, right? Did you meet Dr. Light?
He came once.
Yeah, okay. We should get some Air Force funding here. Okay, thanks.
So I think that there is a question over there. So regarding brown,
Health science are not.
Yeah. Yeah, Cynthia, yeah, health sciences. I would like to know the details of what you're thinking, but I'd like to know the details of what you're thinking, but if it's a clinical trial or something that's really like biohealth medical, if it's medical, it's probably not going to work, especially if it's like human subjects. But you should please send me the idea. Just like
she's over there.
I see you, Cynthia. Okay. Yes. If you want to just send a sentence about the idea in an email to that email that you can see now, that'd be great. We can do a quick check to make sure that there's a chance or not.
Facultad de Ciencias Químicas.